Yeah, I suppose we'll welcome everyone. My name is Winston Welch, and I'm Executive Director of the Outdoor Circle. And we're delighted to have you all here today for this part of our grant, which we've gotten from Hawaiʻi Council for Humanities. And of course, part of that is to let the public know what we've gotten out of this. And so we are happy to have you all here. Some of you are friends of Outdoor Circle, some of you are archivists, some of you might be involved with the library program at UH. Whatever you're here for, welcome. This has been a really exciting venture that we've had in conjunction with Hawaiʻi Council for Humanities. So let me just dive right in and say uh, what we'll be going over today is the Preservation and Access Grant that we got from Hawaiʻi Council for Humanities last year. And it took us a little bit of time to get in there, but what will be our order of the day will be that I'll just give you a brief overview of what this grant was about and why we sought it. Then I'll ask Diane Harding who is the president of the Outdoor Circle, to talk a little bit about the Outdoor Circle, why it's important, why we really needed to get this information out there and accessible to the public. And then we'll move to Adam Jansen, who's the state archivist, and sort of an overview of how this fits into the state archives and their involvement and connection with the project there and why that's a good fit. And then finally to Jasmine Malone, who's been doing heroic efforts on this project, and we have been thrilled with the results. And sad that it's ending this portion, but there's a lot more to the story that's coming. So with that, I will say, so what this is this was part of the Preservation and Access Grant of the Hawaiʻi Council for the Humanities, and want to give a shout out to Stacy Hoshino there, who is Director of Community Grants. And if you have, similar projects, I encourage you to go on the Hawaiʻi Council for Humanities site and look for, see if this fits your organization. These grants are to fund projects that malama our history and preserve existing resources that are important to the community, and to make them publicly accessible to researchers, students, and the general public. So the way that this came about was, so I'd been executive director going on about 10 years or so, and the organization started in 1912. So no one who's involved with the organization in the beginning is with us at this time, but it's such an enduring mission of the Outdoor Circle, which is to keep Hawaii clean, green, and beautiful by protecting, preserving, and enhancing our environment. So it's a very simple mission, but it continues and is still very relevant today as it was in the beginning. I encourage you to go to our website, outdoorcircle.org, if you would like to know more about the organization, and join it if you're not a member. But what happened with this, why we applied for this grant in the beginning, was we had been told that the archives were deposited at UH, and that was kind of like the Sally Edwards archives. And we hadn't had the need to go into the archives, but in fact, the archives had been moved to the state archives. And this sort of was discovered when we needed to find some information about exceptional trees when they had been, if they had been exceptionalized over on the Big Island. And uh, our records we found are, of course, deposited, and we traced them, and they're at the state archives. But this was during COVID, and it was quite harrowing to go in and search for records when we weren't quite sure of where to find these records. Some of them, it seems, have been cataloged, but others, it was just a little bit difficult for us to access. At the same time, the Mission Homes Museum did a wonderful uh, I guess oh, it was like it was not a play, but essentially it's like little baby plays called Footprints on the Land for us, and this is part of the Pupu Cemetery Theater, and their programs manager had gone to the state archives and found information about our founder, Chirila Lowry. And so all of this together made me realize, okay, we really need to know what's in our archives. How do we get to them? And that came about then with discussions with Adam Jansen, the state archivist, and he suggested, I think, that we apply to the Hawaiʻi Council for the Humanities, which we did. That led us to this point where we're at right now. We have run into some interesting changes over the course what we had originally envisioned with the project, and I will leave that for Adam and for Jasmine to talk about. But suffice it to say that we had many more archives at the state than we realized, and that amalgamating all of these and gathering them in a coherent manner has required also an extension of the project, and Outdoor Circle has contributed extra funds for that. But our original hope was that we could digitize some of our files, the collection at the state archives. However, given the enormous increase in files that we discovered, we weren't able to do that now, but we will be applying for additional grants for that, so that our original goal, which is to digitize these archives and have them made available to the wider public and for researchers, that be met. And we weren't exactly planning on being able to digitize those. We had a hope that we could, and we did put that in there as a goal if there was enough time. That, as it turns out, there was not this time. So with that, I will move on and ask Diane Harding to give us an overview of the Outdoor Circle, what it's about, why it's important, what we're doing, all of that. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you, Winston. First of all, what I'd like to say is what an honor it has been to be a part of the Outdoor Circle, and an organization that has had such a lasting and extensive impact on the quality of life here in Hawaii. As Winston mentioned, I'll just give you a brief history here. It's hard to give a brief history because we have our fingers in so many pies here. But just to mention that we were started in 1912 in Honolulu. And the mission of the organization at that time was to beautify Honolulu. And they planted tens of thousands of trees, and they helped establish numerous urban green spaces, which you wouldn't be able to do today, including parks and botanical gardens. They helped form county or commissions to protect and plant trees and to remove unsightly trash in urban neighborhoods. They formed a network of branches across the islands to expand their reach. And although the organization is probably best known for banning billboards throughout the islands back in 1927, our lasting impact on the quality of life in Hawaii reaches far beyond that. The vision of our early founders to protect and enhance Hawaii's natural beauty through their civic engagement and advocacy has spawned generations of environmental stewards who have kept this legacy alive and flourishing. And over the past century, everyone in Hawaii has been the beneficiary of the work of the Outdoor Circle. And our impacts are clearly evident on the landscape of the Hawaii that we know today. On our byways free of billboards, and our neighborhoods lined with trees, and our parks filled with trees, and our land use ordinances, and sustainable communities plans that set zoning and building standards for residential neighborhoods as well as our business districts. In our communities where recycling is now the norm due to the Outdoor Circle's efforts, and utilities are placed underground in all new subdivisions. In our cultural and historical sites that have been protected and preserved and restored over the decades, in our watersheds and natural resources that have been protected from development, in our scenic view plains and the natural scenic beauty that surrounds us that has been protected and enhanced for future generations. And no other organization, environmental organization in Hawaii, has touched our lives to the extent of the Outdoor Circle. And these efforts exemplify who we are and why what we do is so important. And we're so happy to have the state archives now have our records, our remarkable historical records, there at the Hawaii State Archives for posterity and for future generations. So we want to thank you for that. So thank you.
Thank you, Diane. And just as our work is done through our branches, which are located throughout the state, and they have come and gone over the century, but we have branches on all of the islands. We have an affiliate relationship with Maui at this point, but they they continue to do work in our inside of our community, and all of those branches also have been collecting archival materials over the century, and that's another thing that we hope to deposit in the future when Adam has the fortitude to accept those at some point. But with that, I would like to turn it over to Adam Jansen, our state archivist, to talk about the mission and community engagement and partnerships of the state archives, as well as this project itself. Thanks, Adam.
All right, thank you. I have a slideshow, so please allow me to introduce myself. I am Dr. Adam Jansen, and it is my privilege and honor to serve as your state archivist and administrator of the public archives. And this opportunity was very well timed, and we'll go into that if I can click the correct button. And hopefully you can see my PowerPoint. Yes, good. Okay, so it is... Now, if I can advance the PowerPoint, that's a different thing. So the agenda is, who are we as the State Archives? What do we do? And most importantly, what were some of the lessons learned from this from our perspective? Jasmine's going to go more into it from what she learned from actually doing the work. But we learned a lot as an institution as well. So for those of you who do not know, the State Archives was originally founded back in 1905, but we really have our intellectual genesis in 1843 when Robert Crichton Wiley, who was Minister for Foreign Affairs under Kamehameha III, started to understand in order to be effective at his job, he had to understand what the current state of relations were between Hawaii and all the other nations. So he started to round up and collect all of the records of not just the Foreign Office, but also the office of the mo'i, the sovereign. And because of that, we have a fairly comprehensive view of the governmental history of Hawaii back to 1790. So it's a really unique opportunity that even though Hawaii has gone through 5 different forms of government, we still have this unbroken chain of these incredibly important records. And it was finally realized after 2 failed attempts under the kingdom to create a national archives, we actually have founding legislation in 1905, so early and territorial period, that it is the duty of the public archives shall collect all public archives, preserve, arrange, describe, and inventory the same, provide for their safekeeping, compile and furnish information concerning them. So we have an extremely broad mandate since 1905 to collect all public archives. And what that means, along with that, we had the first, what is believed to be purposely built fireproof archives in the US. We moved in 1905, 1906, the old Kanaina building. We moved into our current home in 1953. And now that we've been here for 75 years, we've pretty much outgrown the storage capacity here. So we do have a master plan, and hopefully within the next few years, we'll have plans on how we're going to continue to execute on that mandate. So regarding that mandate, it is our legislative mandate to preserve and make accessible all those records that concern a person's identity, their property, their rights, and their history. And that history aspect of the Collect All Public Archives is really where Outdoor Circle fits in so beautifully, having been around for over 100 years, really trying to maintain the beauty that we all take sometimes for granted. With regards to identity, just real quick, what do we mean by that? We have really the early kingdom and provisional and republic era marriage, birth, death records. We have the World War I service cards of Hawaiians who volunteered to serve in World War I. We have the very, very early marriage records. And here we have a page out of a 1860-61 journal of marriages and births that occurred. And then one of my favorite records in this area, this is Her Majesty Queen Liliuokalani's marriage record. And if you look in the lower right corner, it says, agent for granting marriage licenses to foreigners on Oahu. So because Dominus was not a Hawaiian, there was a very special process to make sure that they took care of the kanaka. Regarding property, of course, we start with the very first, the genesis of all land ownership in Hawaii, the Bukamehele of 1848, the very first division of land where the king started to cede some of his rights. We have the royal patents, we have the land commission awards that are all signed by the kings and queen herself. And then with rights documents, we have all of the session laws going back to the very, very beginning of time. Again, all the originals that are signed by the sovereign, signed by the governor, all of those originals are here in case there's ever any question of what did the law really say. We can go back to those signed originals. And then fun things like passports in Kingdom that allowed people to actually come into and leave the country as part of those rights of citizenship. And then we also do an extensive amount of outreach. So for those of you who don't currently follow us, I would encourage you to check out our Facebook or Instagram page. We post a historic photo every single day. Every week's a different theme. So if you don't like this week, wait till next week. And then we also are now increasingly doing oral histories and Hawaiian music concerts, which you'll find on our YouTube page. And again, we continue to do this mandate. And so we're continually getting in new donations of photographs. We recently acquired the Williams Photography Collection, well in excess of 1 million photographs, going back to J.J. Williams in 1883. Manuscript collections, historic artifacts. We just had a very large bottle collection come in. So if anybody's interested in bottles going back to Kingdom era, we've got those. We're partnering with Olelo to capture high quality oral histories in studio with a 5-camera setup. And then we preserve all the footage from all those cameras, as well as producing half-hour episodes to air on Olelo cable and online. And then various grants to digitize materials. We recently completed a Mellon grant to put up 525,000 pages of Kingdom records and make those accessible online. And then we work with volunteers a lot to help do various things because like every other archives in Hawaii, we don't have enough staff. So we're trying to supplement that with volunteers by reaching out to partner organizations such as Outdoor Circle to leverage their employees, their volunteers, so that we can get them to also help process those records that they know better than we do. And so just some other things, the Star Bulletin, we just had another photographer offer to give us 20 years of his Star advertiser photography. So we've continually getting more stuff in, which is great because we have one of the most sophisticated digitization systems on the planet from Digital Transitions. In fact, we've got 5 units right now. We're acquiring a 6th next month, and we're beta testing their new lights, which will give us even better quality images than we're able to capture now. So we're very excited about testing that, although living life on the bleeding edge is often painful. It's been an interesting learning challenge. So that's who we are. That's what we do. We love history. We love preserving history. And equally important, we love making it accessible to the people of Hawaii and Hawaiians everywhere, whether they're on the islands, on the continent, in Europe. 24/7, 365 access is our goal. Now, going into this project, it was incredible timing for us because we, as our institution, really have pretty poor files of how we received the Outdoor Circle files in the first place, and then what that transfer was from the other archival institution that had records and gave them to us that in an already partially processed way. We went through our accession files, we went through the receipt files, and for whatever reason, whichever state archives employee was handling that didn't really organize and file them really well. So how we acquired those for us was really difficult because part of donating materials to us is assigning rights to use those files to the public. We are the public archives. Anyone for any reason can come in and see anything we have. We don't gatekeep. We don't say, well, you can't use this, or no, you're not part of that organization, so you can't see that. So for us, trying to make these records accessible without that deed of gift means that we didn't know where the copyright resided, because Outdoor Circle was the originator. They are the creators, they are the copyright holders, yet they transferred some of those rights to another organization who then gave us the materials, but we didn't have that documentation for usage rights. What was there? Were there any conditions at the original deposit where some things couldn't be made accessible? For us, that would make a huge determination now on whether or not we would accept those files. So there was no paper trail on that really gave us comfort saying, yes, we're going to make all of these, both those that we received directly and those we received secondarily, are publicly accessible. So a huge portion of this collection has been sitting in our unprocessed section in the basement without any public pointers saying, hey, you can access this. So that was the difficulty, and we've been dealing with that for over 20 years. And then it was also complicated, and I think this is kind of a self-inflicted wound, because in 2003, Outdoor Circle actually received an NHPRC grant to microfilm parts of the collection that were here at the archives. And for some reason, the microfilm was called the Sally Edwards Archives of the Outdoor Circle. And again, if we go back into our documentation, I cannot find the name Sally Edwards anywhere. So why it was named after her, no clue. And it's doubly complicated because nowhere in our finding aid, nowhere in our archival descriptions is she mentioned. So if you go to our records, it's the Outdoor Circle. Yet the microfilm is labeled as the Sally Edwards Archives. And so again, for us, I think now that archival theory is much more evolved, we are now implementing the International Council of Archives International Standard of Archival Description, G is in general, so that we have this very clear definition with examples of how we should name things, so that we can consistently follow and apply recommended practice in archival theory. So that hopefully will help start to clear things up moving forward. There was also some integration challenges because we had stuff, we were given stuff, and we had stuff microfilmed. And how all of those need to be intellectually organized made things really difficult because the two major collections from us and the other archives were organized differently. So what? We didn't have any processing plans that we could find. Ours, it turns out, were only halfway processed. So that NHPRC grant back in 2003, and stop me, Stacy, if you hear this, said we were going to produce all of this and then microfilm all of this. And once we got into it, it was a lot more work that we could handle. And so the processing only got part way done. And so now 20 years later, where do you go? That was the difficulty. And also because it was partially processed, partially not processed, and a third party, Second Archives gave it, we had no idea about archival concepts of the respect des fonds, the original order that Outdoor Circle stored these things in. It was chaos. So the biggest challenge I think that Jasmine had was figuring out how are we going to do this with the advantage of actually working with the subject matter experts, the Outdoor Circle of today. So it made it a little bit easier for us, because if you as an organization did not exist today, I don't know what we would have done. We would have had to use our best guess for professional estimate of what needed to be done. And then the microfilming, I don't know what to say about the microfilm. We have 17 rolls of 35 millimeter microfilm, very well done, absolutely beautiful, called the Sally Edward Archives. Yet when you look at the straight chronological sequencing of the microfilm, it didn't match anything of the three holdings that we had: unprocessed, partially processed, and stuff coming from the Second Archives. So we've got great microfilm images, which are digitized and online right now, but good luck finding something and saying, hey, I'd like to see the original. There's no backtracking to it. There was no citations in the microfilm. And so the lesson learned for us moving forward that I would share with you, whenever we digitize, the first thing we digitize is the folder that that material is in. So we're trying to replicate that experience. If somebody came in physically, we handed them the folder, that's what they get digitally. So they know if they want to see the original based on a scan they saw online, they have the absolute citation to go directly to that record, not having to work through 17 boxes of material, trying to find where it now lives because maybe it was reprocessed and organized in a different way. And then lastly, to wrap up my little portion, the lesson learned for me that I share with you is just be open. I really feel strongly that this was fate. We had no idea Winston was coming in. This has been a problem of ours for quite a while since I've been here, 8 years. We've had this huge section outdoor circle with archival supplies and a, do not touch aura around it because we just had no idea what the status of these records were. Yet here's the executive director coming in to research their own history, open that door to say, hey, Winston, what do you think about helping us make sure that we can process all of these, integrate it into one whole unit and make it completely publicly accessible? And fortunately, he loved the idea. We now have clear title because they signed over all of the access rights to the public as part of our protocol. So now we know we can make it accessible to anybody, anywhere, at any time. And we were able to leverage their expertise and their institutional knowledge to make sure that we were on the right track as we started to integrate these really 3 differently organized portions of their records. And so it was a really unique opportunity. And so I really am so grateful that fate put Winston in our path, because otherwise those records would still be foundering downstairs. And having looked through them, there are incredible pieces of history that the public should have access to so that they can learn from those things that worked and continue to replicate those successes. So that's the overview from me in 10 minutes or less. If you have any questions, there is my email, and I am going to stop sharing if I can hit the right button. And there we go. Thank you.
And I'm going to jump in now and start sharing my screen.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And just, you got it, Jasmine? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So thank you, firstly, to Winston, Diane, and Adam for talking us through how the project started in its inception. I'm going to introduce myself first, and then I'm going to focus on what I did on the project. So let me progress. All right. So what I'm going to do, and I'm sorry, I need to move this out of my way. All right. I'm going to talk about who I am and what my role is in the project. I'm going to talk about the process of surveying or appraising the collection, as well as creating the processing plan and what I've done to start processing the collection, talk about some more successes and challenges from my own perspective, and then mention a little bit of the next steps and my takeaways from working on the project. So who am I? I am Jasmine Malone, and I'm presenting as my title was the Archives Appraiser and Digitization Specialist, but you can just call me the Project Archivist for short, for the Outdoor Circle collection at the Hawaii State Archives. I graduated from the Master of Library Information Science program at UH Manoa in the spring, and pretty much jumped into this project in June. I'm actually leaving this project this Friday to take another role. So that is why you'll see that I've stopped working on it at a specific spot, and we'll talk about that'll be included in my next steps when I talk about that section. So my role, as a project archivist. When I was initially brought in, we were thinking that I would be surveying about 51 boxes from the container list that I received, and I'll show that on the next slide. And based on the container list, these items were pretty much already arranged. And then I would be proposing a processing plan for those boxes. I would then process the boxes and then digitize as much as I could. The funding for this project, for the time frame, the funding went through around October. So it was supposed to be about a 9-week turnaround for surveying, proposal, processing, and digitization for 51 boxes. And at the time, I was very confident that we should be able to do that based off of the established arrangement of the collection and the amount of boxes that were presented. So once I started surveying, I immediately noticed a discrepancy between the boxes that I was receiving from the circulation desk and the boxes that were on the container list that I received. So I created a brand new container list. It's not listed here because we've already got to talk about these ones, but right now there are 4 container lists for this collection, just so you know. The discrepancy was not that I was receiving boxes that weren't from the Outdoor Circle, but it was that they were not on my initial container list, which meant that there were more boxes and more items in the collection than we had originally thought, which is nice, but for the time period that we had to work with became a challenge. So my first day working on the collection was June 17th. For the survey portion of this collection, I kept a processing journal that I would update every week or so. So I'm going to share some entries from my journal. Yes, I'm going to give you some insights from my diary. But it really is to document I tried my best to document as much as possible, because I was coming in as the maybe 4th archivist to work on this collection from multiple institutions. So I wanted to make sure that the things that I documented were very clear, and my decision making was documented as well. So when I started the collection, I wrote, after spending 2 hours looking through the collection, the item description does not appear to coincide with the box organization as it exists in the Hawaii State Archives. So that was at that moment, 2 hours in, I decided I had to create a new container list. 3 days later, I noticed I'm still working on this container list. I'm still not seeing very much overlap with this container list that I have. I'm documenting preservation issues such as old staples or paper clips, any signs of degradation, etc., things like that, and items that need to be moved into oversized storage and flat storage. I was documenting like little things that for the purpose of processing, things like that. Again, because the collection has already been touched by archivists, is in relatively good shape. Because a lot of the materials were already in acid-free folders. The folders were clearly labeled. I'm just making sure there's continuity between the items that were in the folder and the label that was on the folder. Lots of empty folders that needed to be discarded, but documenting everything and not discarding anything. No processing was done at this time. So I'm working off of boxes that I'm not seeing in any of the container lists. So I'll start on the slide here. List 1 is the list that I got when I started working on the project. List 2 I got shortly afterwards, directly from Adam, that was materials that were already held within the Outdoor Circle. Those materials were deposited in 1982, and that is, and they had different folders, and they had the M449 stamp on them. The list to the left, I still hadn't seen those boxes yet, but I kept it because I was documenting if I found something that seemed similar or seemed to relate. So I'm working off of these 2 lists as well as the one that I'm creating, just to keep you all up to date. So starting on July 15th, which is a month into the project, I'm starting to receive boxes that fit with list number 1. At this point, what do all of my diary entries mean that I've documented this stuff? It means that I had surveyed around 67 boxes at that time. And the materials from list 2 had been integrated into the materials that I had seen in those first 67 boxes. So box 68 is technically box 1 on list 1, but in my new container list, it's completely something different. Which is how, again, we've already exceeded the 51 boxes that I was initially starting with, as well as adding now 67 boxes to this collection, plus the 51 that we've already established exists. To this point, we know there was a donation of materials directly from the Outdoor Circle in the 80s, which coincide with list 2, and a donation of Outdoor Circle materials from Hamilton Library Archives at UH Manoa in 2004, which coincide with list 1 here. By the time I had list 2 and list 1, which list 2 has about like 167 folders. I don't remember exactly how many boxes that would mean right now. It's already, again, the collection is already expanded past what do we need to do. So on July 18th, that's when we learned from Winston about this third container list, which is created by someone within the Outdoor Circle, but also you can see on there it has the State Archives collection number as well, who seems to be responsible for gathering some of the materials that were also sent to the archives and documenting them before sending them off. So now we have 3 lists that we're working with. We're around the end of the survey period. So now I'm talking about the survey results. We found that the Outdoor Circle collection holds 119 boxes with an extent of 77 cubic feet, which is the measurement of how much space holds on the collection. For those who may not know, the collection was donated in part by the Outdoor Circle in 1982 and Hamilton in 2004, which we've established. The collection at Hamilton was named after a major donor, Sally H. Edwards, which is where that name is coming from, who contributed over $600,000 to the Outdoor Circle and passed away in 2014. So that's where that name is coming from. Again, we're not seeing that name within the state archives holdings, though. There's a container list created by the Outdoor Circle in 2001. That's list 3. That loosely coincides with the materials in the collection. However, the names and the order of the folders have changed since the donation because processing has been done. The folders appear arranged by either the State Archives or Hamilton Library or in-house at the Outdoor Circle, as evidenced by the acid-free housing used, the order in which the materials are set, and the findings that were created over time. We also see some 3D materials, such as like audiovisual materials, the microfilms. We have the archival copies and used copies of those, which are primarily kept together and not so much integrated within the collection. We have VHSs. There's a floppy disk in there. There's a gavel in there. There's etc. So those are kind of all interspersed throughout the collection, except the AV materials and the photographic materials are separate. The collection is believed to have been arranged by at least 3 archivists, as I've mentioned. So I would be the 4th one to touch the collection. These records encompass the documented history, the daily business functions, the activities, the public reception of the Outdoor Circle as created by the nonprofit and its members, materials from the news media, or materials from private citizens that primarily date between 1911 and 2004. The bulk of the collection is between 1960 and 1995. However, the entire collection's timeframe holds a considerable amount of materials per decade. The collection holds 4,238 folders and individual items. It's big. So when creating the processing plan, I started by verifying the materials shared with the additional finding aid, again, list 3, making a processing plan based on the provenance of the 3 finding aids and in consideration of the current arrangement of the folders and boxes at the moment that I received them, while considering the record's function to the business needs of the organization, because they are institutional records. I did this with the help of guidance of Archivist of State Archives, so help of Adam, help of the collections manager, asking lots of questions, especially because it's being held within the state archives, making it make sense and coincide with the way other finding aids look, so that they maintain a consistent order. So I proposed the arrangement as follows, as you can see here in this very colorful display. Administrative files, which includes correspondence, board of directors records, policies, reports, meeting minutes, Ways and Means Committee and membership records. Then Outdoor Circle Activities is Series 2, which talks about Outdoor Circle's history, legislation, public affairs. The Landscape and Planting Committee, which has a lot of materials. Signs and Billboards Committee, which also has a lot of materials. Printed materials, because these were already separated, and I didn't want to reintegrate them. Then moving on to parks, a lot of Diamond Head material, a lot of Ala Moana material, a lot of Kamehameha V and Alan Sanford Davis materials, et cetera, other parks. And then, as Winston mentioned, there's a lot of materials from the branches and garden circles. The name is interchanged over time, especially Lani Kailua Outdoor Circle, Kaneohe Outdoor Circle, and then various branches on the other islands. And then lastly, we have photographs, scrapbooks, audiovisual materials, and microfilm, et cetera. The arrangement is proposed in this way to gain intellectual control over the collection, as it was deposited over varying years, to order the materials by their function and the purpose they serve to the Outdoor Circle, again, to maintain the series titles and the relative provenance by previous archivists, not the creators. Again, the names, a lot of the names did come from the way in which they were described by the Outdoor Circle, but the title is hopefully describing the function of the materials. Because some very smart people started working on this already, and I'm just trying to update it and add to it. So I just wanted to make sure that it was clear to the future incoming researchers. This is the estimated arrangement. So as I mentioned on the other slide, I didn't talk about it, but it was on the other slide. It's about 341 hours that I estimated for processing of this collection, because of the amount of boxes, the amount of weeding, refoldering. There's been quite a bit of reshuffling and refoldering, as well as preparing, eventually preparing labels and writing descriptions for the series, etc. So providing an ample amount of time after the surveying to make sure that the collection is being taken care of by whoever is coming next, so we don't have to do this again in another 20 years. So on December 9th, which was Monday, I finished processing Series 1, and I had to slightly adjust the proposed order of Series 1 to better communicate the relationship of the records to each other for future researchers. So this is what it looks like now. Series 1, I mentioned correspondence, reports. I added a very large section of financial records. The bulk of the administrative files is actually the Ways and Means Committee records. There are a lot of activities that were hosted by the Ways and Means activity. It's really, really interesting. And when the collection is available, being able to look at the varying things that the Ways and Means Committee did, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, super, super, super interesting. And then going into the Board of Directors meeting minutes, then general administrative files, and then membership records. Some of the changes that I made include President's correspondence. I originally had that separate, but I just decided to integrate it because it just, a lot of the correspondence was not responded to by the President, so it didn't make sense to separate it, especially if there's going to be chains of communication. Another example is that the Treasurer's reports are not with the rest of the financial records, and it's because the Treasurer is a position held within the Board of Directors, but not all financial records were created by the Treasurer, which is indicated in the fact that there was a finance committee and the Ways and Means Committee. And I'm trying to finish up very quickly, sorry. Finally, these ad hoc committees and membership records are sub-series under the administrative records, because for the most part, that is how I receive the records. And as labeled as administrative, and they were grouped with the administrative records. So again, leaving them in that order that I received it by previous archivists. I don't need to reinvent the wheel in this. Again, very smart people did this before me. And the Ways and Means Committee is defined as a fundraising body of the organization. They hosted a lot of events and activities. They wrote grants. They handle donations and bequests. And a lot of property has been donated to the Outdoor Circle, which I found really interesting. And then they published books like Majesty, The Exceptional Trees of Hawaii, Majesty 1 and 2. Majesty 1 published in 82, and Majesty 2 published in 91. So there's like, again, Ways and Means is the bulk of this series. So for the successes and challenges, what I would count as major successes is completing the survey, because it was very interesting, kind of daunting, but very interesting to see the expanse of the collection. Sharing the digitized microfilm with the Outdoor Circle, I think that was a really neat thing that we could do. Again, and that was 17 reels. So they're around 300 pages each of scrapbook material. So since it is online, I would recommend checking that out to learn a bit more about the Outdoor Circle with that primary source. And then completing series 1, which is now contained within 16 boxes, 660 folders, which is about 15% of the collection. And some of the items are in oversize. However, this required accessing and condensing 30 boxes to achieve the 16 box processing. Very few items were moved to deaccession, which I also find is a success because you don't want to get rid of a lot of stuff. Merely excess of 3 to 5 copies of annual reports and the used copies of the microfilm. Some of the challenges is keeping tabs on the box contents, box location, whether the box has been processed, and the folders that are not relevant to the current series. I have a lot of spreadsheets documenting all of that stuff. No one wants to see those. That is why they're not in here. The other one is assessing expectations on time for processing. It is every time I open the box, even if it's a box that I opened before, it is a new assessment of how long is it going to take to do this box? Am I going to get it done within this much time? How do I communicate that, etc.? It just because the collection ended up being much larger than we had originally anticipated. And lastly, maintaining a good relationship with the CERC staff. Here's why I say that. It's not a challenge, but it's something to keep in mind because they are the folks that are retrieving your boxes for you from upstairs or downstairs. And I can't have all of my boxes at once, so I just have to, you really gotta be nice to the folks that are doing things for you so that, maintaining that good relationship. I gave them a huge shout out because I did have to shuffle. I need one box for 3 minutes because I just need to pull a folder out of it. And I'm so sorry you have to run up and down the stairs. Like, I know it is their job. I just feel bad. So make sure that you maintain a good relationship with your source folks. So next steps for this collection would be securing another round of funding, which the Outdoor Circle would do, to continue the project and bring in another archivist to continue the processing and eventual digitization of this project. And I have lots of notes to pass on to whoever comes next, if it's someone in the audience. My major takeaways from this is what I found interesting about working on this collection is the way in which the Outdoor Circle has consistently, over the 93 years that are covered within the collection, documented itself and its governance, its history, its contributions, and its public perception. It is, once this collection is available to the public, I feel like researchers can get a good holistic sense of the Outdoor Circle's relationship to the land, the trees, roads, the legislation around billboards, etc., birds, anti-litter campaigns, because it is really well contained, and there's so much in this collection, and I really recommend to come experience it as well as other collections like it at the state archives once it's available to the public. And now I believe it's time for our Q&A.
Okay, wow. That's I think you're the new subject matter expert on the Outdoor Circle, Jasmine. So with all of that, it's amazing to listen to how you approach that and just the expansion of work that you were looking at, because the collection doubled in size for what you were originally looking at, more than doubled in size. So this was yeah, your mind is so sharp and brilliant. We were just very fortunate to have you on this. Um, and if we have some time for some questions, yeah, uh, I'm happy to entertain some of those, but also I just wanted to thank Dr. Jansen for his amazing oversight on this and brilliance in this, and Jasmine for your brilliance in this. It takes a special kind of mind to be able to go into somebody else's um, records and organize them in a way that makes them meaningful and accessible for even us at the Outdoor Circle. And that's what we're looking forward to now, is the next steps. Um, so if I understand that correctly, then Jasmine, out of the 6 series, you've been able to complete the first administrative series, and then the next ones will follow that same pattern that you had. Was there something that you didn't know anything probably about the Outdoor Circle before this started? What jumped out at you besides that good record keeping and how we documented our own history? Was there anything that surprised you, or that you said, wow, this is about the organization itself, or anything?
I would say and I will say it based off of the collection, the materials that I spent the most time with, the one thing that is very clearly stood out to me was, and as Diane mentioned earlier, the reach of the Outdoor Circle. The Outdoor Circle has had its hands in everything. And again, it's documented very well in this collection. Having its hands in legislation, like roads that you have definitely driven on. They may have planted trees. They may have done campaigns to assist with anti-litter. They may have done campaigns to work on these parks. Like I feel like there's no place on Oahu that I have been that I may not have interacted with the Outdoor Circle, and I would have had no idea. So that's one aspect of it, and the second one I will say is again, I always find correspondence the most entertaining because I just love reading people's letters back and forth. But but I'll save that little tidbit for when folks can explore it. It is the Ways and Means Committee, because there are so many interesting activities that the Outdoor Circle put on that you wouldn't think would necessarily be related, such as putting on plays or publishing books, or the Chopsticks in China event, the house tours, those kinds of activities or that people were leaving homes or $25,000, etc., in their wills to the Outdoor Circle. I always find that kind of information very entertaining and interesting. But that speaks to the impact of the Outdoor Circle, and also the creativity and connection to the community that the organization holds. So I think that all of that that I just mentioned is all in series 1. So there's still garden circles and branch materials that can be explored. There's materials for landscape and planting that can be delved into a lot deeper. So again, it's really interesting just to learn more about these things that you see every day that you don't realize who was responsible for that impact.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's I imagine that this was your first project out of graduate school, and maybe you and Adam will have some papers coming out of this, or that you'll be able to use this for when you're lecturing in classes or sharing at the at conferences that you're at. Any thoughts on those, or are you already halfway through a paper now?
For my part, I wish I had time to write. we've just got so much work and to get to that. I integrate it into what classes I teach, but as far as actually being able to publish it in a journal, I don't see that happening on my end.
Okay, well, Jasmine, we're
Yeah, I'm gonna keep it in mind. My brain needs to rest because right now I just have 30 tabs and they're all just spreadsheets of the Outdoor Circle stuff. So once I can put these Excel cells into words, then I may be able to formulate the narrative more cohesively.
I'd like to open this up, but there's questions from folks here. Maybe you can use the hand raise signal or just raise your hand, and if we had any. It's a lot of information to digest. Yeah, Andrew, you got a question? Go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say thanks. It's great to hear Jasmine and Adam talk about the collection. So this is a collection that I know it had been used as a teaching material for the UHM LIS program. I think I still remember if it was 20 or 15 years ago. I don't know if that was when Susan Shaner was working as a state archivist and was teaching as an adjunct, or if this was when part of the collection was at Hamilton. And it was just I wanted to echo what Jasmine was saying, that there's a lot of material here. Some eras were just really very well documented, and I think it would be great. A historian would love that. But it seemed like there are some other eras that were very skimpy, so it really hadn't, it really depended on what era, what region. Some chapters or activists were probably much better about documenting. So I hope that the Outdoor Circle is also moving forward about trying to, find those pukas, because that's going to be what's important, and making sure that I think when I remember looking at some of the materials, it felt like some of the things had been maybe kind of cleaned. And whereas if as a historian, I think it's going to be those internal discussions that Jasmine was mentioning, how exciting the letters are. Those are the things that are going to really reach and help us to see what was inside, any historian to see what was happening. But anyway, just wanted to give a shout out and say that it's really exciting to see this brought to a next level and continuing to develop. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Other questions or comments? I think probably people may have some as time goes by. It was a lot of information. And of course, this was recorded. We will put this on the Outdoor Circle's website, and maybe you all can, I don't know if you have a link for it or not at the archives, but there's a lot more to come from this. This is like, I consider this almost like stage one, but we had these other, obviously, folks that have invested a huge amount of time beforehand. But there's a lot of work that's going to be coming from now. Like Jasmine said, maybe there's someone here online who will be picking up the work, or someone that that would be interested in that. We have a lot just at that archives. And like I said, we have more that we are gathering from our branches and materials that did not make it in either of these three other deposits at the archives. So we're looking forward to having a coherent collection so that the people of Hawaii and beyond can understand the many, many areas that this organization has impacted, and not just in Hawaii, but in fact internationally. And we have to remember, this was started by women without the right to vote in this country, who started essentially with a protest action against billboards. And this was amazingly impactful. It's still relevant today. You can read us about us in the news. We've got a couple comments coming in. Yes, we are recording this, Stacy. Yes, thank you, Stacy, and Hawaiʻi Council for the Humanities, which gave us the ability to do this. So again, we will be looking forward to a lot more coming down the pike. I do want to there's other questions or comments that we have. Diane?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. I'm also involved with the Lani Kailua branch of the Outdoor Circle, and we started in 1948. We've done a lot of stuff in Kailua. It's our 76th year now, we have scrapbooks, which are filled with newspaper articles from day one, 1948 to about 1999, when everybody went digital, so we stopped scrapbooking. But there's probably 15 scrapbooks. They're wonderful to go through, to look at find old stuff, and I take pictures of the articles and things. Is that something that could go to the archives, and you would then digitize each page, or how would that work?
Let me unmute. Okay, there we go. First, I want to echo Winston's gratitude towards Stacy and HCH because it was a painful education for us, partially around how poorly we had documented some of these handovers, how we did not document our processing plans before we did these things. And for us, you know, it was a painful moment when we found out that we had partially processed and didn't notate that anywhere. So what we had thought was the extent of needing processing did not incorporate literally half the holdings. So it's been a good lesson learned for us because we lost that institutional knowledge. And I see Lynn's here, and I saw her name all over that NHPRC. Regarding scrapbooks, scrapbooks are the bane of archivists everywhere, but they're so incredibly fun because they're organized and their thought has been put into that. But absolutely, that is something that we think is appropriate for this. Unfortunately, we do have a rare book scanner that is capable of handling those types of materials. It just, again, is a question of staffing.
And then, assuming that they were brought there to be scanned or incorporated, they then become your property, so they no longer are available.
Well,
it's digitized.
Small correction: they become the property of the people of Hawaii. Again, we are just the custodians, and one of the requirements it's put into the public trust. But we don't digitize anything that isn't held here because goodness knows we've got a lifetime work of digitization ahead of us. But we would be happy, thrilled to train Outdoor Circle volunteers and staff on how to do that so that we could prioritize that and get it online sooner.
And just let's take,
because
go ahead, Jasmine.
Sorry, I was going to say I'm very jealous because I sit next to the digitization lab, and it's super fancy tech that I have never been able to touch because I'm just not at that point in the collection. We didn't get there. But that was something that I was looking forward to, is being able to be trained on the super fancy stuff that they have at the archives.
Maybe before you go, we can get a little mini test there. But so, and I think what you're saying then, Adam, is that folks could come down to some of these 4,200 files and start digitizing them and uploading them so that they are all online. Is that where we're at then?
With those things that Jasmine signed off on as processed, yes. So basically all of the administrative records.
Right. Okay. Series 1. Okay. And do you have any other questions or comments for today? Okay, well, seeing none. Thank you, everybody, for coming up. Thank you, Diane, Adam, Jasmine. You've been fabulous to work with, and we look forward to a lot more, and also tracking your great career that you've got in front of you, Jasmine.
So, there's some people who want to say something, or are they saying goodbye?
I think
like with the rest of us.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
everybody.
Yeah.
Thank
you. Yeah.
Happy holidays.
Adam. Wonderful.
you.
Aloha.